G'day everyone. Today we're going to have a look at these manual climate controls on this Toyota Hilux. Now maybe your hot and cold isn't working, your direction, or like me, your fan isn't working. Well, today we're going to fix all of that. Okay, so here we have a genuine second-hand control unit. It comes with everything we see here, and it was $100 shipped to my door. Now, the genuine ones are going to be over $1,000 just for the fan control unit, so this is definitely the way to go. A good, working, genuine unit is always going to be better than the aftermarket ones, and we'll see why a little bit later. We take that screw out behind the fan control knob, and we expose the bit we need. This is the climate control system here, and it comes with everything that I needed. It's got the two cables, it's got the fan control unit, the LEDs, everything is there, and it is all genuine, and hopefully everything works the way it should. We'll find out in just a moment. So here we have the fan control unit. That is actually the bit I need. My fan is not working and that control unit is burnt out. These parts here that control the direction and the temperature, they can be removed, and it does make it a lot easier to change the unit if your cables are in good condition. If they're not, we can change them, and we will in this video change them as well. Okay, before we pull anything apart, make sure that these knobs are all the way anti-clockwise to the left. That is cold, fan off, and face. These gears in the driver's side footwell need to go back in the same position so this whole system works. The bottom one is your heater, and the top one is for the direction. Now they are key splined onto the gears, so we definitely need to make sure that nothing moves while we pull it apart, and we put the new section together with everything anti-clockwise to the left so we know where the gears need to go. Otherwise you won't get full heat and everything won't quite work. Okay, the knob should come off by hand. If you have a tight one like I did here, a pair of pliers with a rag on the end just to protect the knob is good enough to pull them out. They're just a press fit, and we have a screw behind the fan control knob, and then we can unplug all of the plugs that hold the stereo fascia in. There's quite a few on this one. We unplug every single one, including the air conditioning plug and the hazard lights, and we can remove the entire fascia out the way so we can remove the climate control module. Now it has a pin on either side. We just push it down and it should come out of the dash. You usually get a screwdriver in there, or you can get your finger in and just push that tab down and it should spill out of the dashboard, and we can unplug the fan control module. This particular one is an aftermarket one, and we need to replace it with a genuine one. It has on the top here, this black section, that is your fresh air and recirculate. Now that'll slide off backwards, and we can just push that out of the way, assuming yours is working correctly. If it's not, we can trace the cable backwards, and we can change that as well if you need to change it out. This one here is burnt out. This is the aftermarket unit. They get very hot, and like this one, the plug and the fan control is actually burnt out. It's been very hot, and that is the reason I'm not a fan of the aftermarket one. They're much cheaper, but this one didn't even last 12 months. So I'll be replacing it with genuine, and that will last hopefully much longer. This fresh air and recirc, like I said before, you just slide it out backwards. There is a tab here I'm just pointing to. We just push it down and we should slide it out of the way. And in my case, it's working fine. I'm just going to store it out of the way so we can go ahead and change out that fan control module and the entire climate control system. I'm actually going to remove the two hot and cold and the direction, because my direction is cracked. That section there is actually cracked. So we're going to change that bit out, and we might as well change all of it for genuine, because no doubt the hot and cold will crack a little bit later as well. As you can see here, as I showed you earlier, it is burnt out. It's been very hot, and it actually smells hot as well. So not a fan of the aftermarket ones. I've replaced the two lights with LEDs because they also got really hot and stopped working almost immediately. They got really dim because they got hot and turned brown. So I've got the new one here, or the good second-hand one. As you can see, there's no burn marks. It's very clean. I know it's out of a working car, and hopefully I'll plug it in and everything works, and we have a genuine fan control unit, and that'll be much better and more reliable than that aftermarket one ever was. Okay, I'm just going to plug it in and make sure the fan works in every position, which it did quite well. I'm pretty happy with that. And we'll make sure that the lights work as well, just to make sure before we plug everything in. And of course, one didn't work. That's fine. We'll change them for the LEDs I had earlier. Just make sure you get the polarity correct, because LEDs do care which way around they go. If they don't work, swap them around 180, get the polarity right, and they should work. If they don't work, then the LED is toast. Of course, both mine work, so I'm happy with that. We'll go ahead and get these cables through the dashboard down into the driver's side footwell. As you can see here, among all the red dust, there is some hooks that hold these cables out of the way of everything. We need to unhook these cables before we can pull them out through the dashboard. So make sure you get them out of them clips. It makes it much easier to get them out when we need to. Now we have a little cover here on the hot and cold side. Now that gives us maximum heat. It actually touches that little switch and tells the system to be on maximum heat. We can just pull them out by hand like I have done here. They sit in a little hole with a detent and you just give them a good tug and they come out. Of course, make sure we're still at maximum cold and we don't touch any of these gears while we're putting it together. The new one comes through the dashboard and we can just pop it back in at maximum cold without touching anything, and everything should line up perfectly, including all the splines of the gear, and it should sweep through left and right without it jamming up. If it jams up, you might have it in the wrong spot because that little white gear has a key spline on it. If it hits the key spline too early, it'll stop earlier than you get full heat or full cold, and you'll need to calibrate it. You need to make sure the gears mesh in the right spot and the key spline stops in the right spot as well. Of course, we can put that little white cover back on. That'll only go in 2 positions. We know it's maximum cold, so we know it needs to point exactly how it looks now. And when we turn it to maximum heat, it should just touch that little switch underneath and tell the car that we are in maximum hot position. When it comes to the direction, it's exactly the same. We just pull it off, make sure we don't touch anything, and we can pull it back through the dash and change it for the new one. In my case here, I know this one is damaged. It's got the crack where the knob goes. I'm actually just going to cut it. It makes it a lot easier. If you know you're going to change it out, just cut it, and then you can pull both ends and throw them in the bin. It makes the job a little bit easier than pulling that gear back through the dashboard for no reason when you can just cut it in half. Of course, the new one, we can't do that, so we've got to push it through the dash. I've taken the cowl off underneath the steering wheel here. It gives you much more access to push it through under into the driver's side footwell, especially if you're working on your own. Of course, that's at face, so we got it all the way anti-clockwise to the face, and we're going to push it in, and everything should be exactly where it was when we pulled it apart. And at this point here, we can actually test it. We can turn the gear and make sure it stops and opens the vent in all directions, and it physically comes to a stop when we go from window all the way to face. And this one does that. It sweeps perfectly, doesn't jam up or anything like that. It does everything it needs to do, so I'm happy it's in the right position. You really can't go wrong as long as you don't turn anything while you pull it apart. Okay, now we're just going to tidy up all them cables behind the dash. They have little clips to make sure everything curves in the right way. We don't want kinks or anything like that, or things will be hard to control. We'll have tight spots. Once we've got them all happy and we know the cables are good and out the way, we'll put that cowl back on underneath the steering wheel there. We don't need to be back under there again. And we'll just make sure all the plugs go in the right direction. All of your stereo controls go through the top. Your hazard lights and air conditioning go through the bottom, as does the fan control, and of course the 2 cables go through the bottom as well. And we just push everything back where it came from, including put the recirc and the fresh control back in the top, and you slide it in from the back and it should clip in position just like that. And we just push everything back into the dashboard neat and tidy and make sure nothing is caught up and everything is clipped in position as it should be. Of course, just before we put all the stereo and dash back together, we're going to test to make sure everything works. Everything sweeps through the motion properly and smoothly. The fan works and all our LED lights and everything is still working. Everything's plugged in properly just before we put the fascia back on. And speaking of the fascia, if you have an aftermarket one like me, the clips from the genuine one actually fit the aftermarket one, and they do make it fit a lot more snug. It's something I missed out in the last one, and it's really good. It actually clips in way better using those yellow sections from the Toyota genuine fascia. Anyway, it's all back together now. Everything works. I'm happy. Everything sweeps through the motion properly. I have a genuine unit in there now, and it is way better than the aftermarket one. Thank you very much for watching.